and their contribution to fostering a climate of free inquiry and scholarly debate has never been more significant. Academic freedom is the lifeblood of innovation and development in any society. It allows educators and students alike to pursue truth and knowledge without fear of reprisal or censorship. However, in environments where free speech is curtailed, academic freedom too is at risk. Universities must always be sanctuaries for free thought, where ideas can be debated and discussed openly. Safeguarding this freedom not only enriches academia, but strengthens the very foundations of our democracy. Our panel tonight includes distinguished members of the judiciary, academia, the legislature, and media, with all of them bringing unique perspectives to the table. Our discussion will navigate the delicate balances required to protect free expression while maintaining the social harmony essential for our nation's progress. The need for robust dialogue on these topics cannot be overstated. With the world watching, Ghana must not only address these pressing issues, but also lead by example in cultivating an environment where free speech and academic freedom are protected and cherished. As president of the Harvard Club of Ghana and a member of the Board of Overseers of Harvard University, I am proud of our partnership with the University of Ghana's Faculty of Law, led by one of our very own, Professor Raymond Atuguba, an alum of Harvard Law School and the current dean of the University of Ghana School of Law. While I am speaking in my capacity as president of the Harvard Club of Ghana, I do also have affiliation with the University of Ghana. I spent a year studying at the University of Ghana, both for my first degree and during my Doctor of Law program, where I took courses in this building at the Faculty of Law. So it's great to be back home. The University of Ghana is one of the premier institutions in Africa, renowned for its commitments to academic freedom and excellence. As Ghana's oldest and largest university, it upholds a rigorous standard of scholarship and inquiry, providing a fertile ground for students and faculty to explore diverse ideas and perspectives freely. This dedication to creating an open academic environment is integral to its mission, fostering a community where intellectual potential can be realized without barriers. The University of Ghana's collaboration with Harvard University further underscores its commitment to maintaining a global standard of education and debate and ensuring that its contributions to academia resonate well beyond its campus. Both institutions share commitments to nurturing the next generation of leaders who are critical, thoughtful, and informed. As we engage in tonight's discussions, I encourage everyone, including many of you who are following online, to participate actively, challenge constructively, and think deeply about the paths we can forge together to defend and enrich the exchange of ideas in our beloved Ghana. Thank you for your presence and for your commitment to shaping a freer, more informed society. I look forward to a stimulating and insightful evening. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a Tutu fellow. He is the president of CarePoint, a tech company. He's on Rabito. Ladies and gentlemen, this man, he's one of those people who was first from primary school through to secondary school, university. Ladies and gentlemen, he's an epitome of what excellence is. A round of applause to Sangu Dele, Doctor. Now, there's a man I want to introduce, and I want to give it a personal touch because he was my lecturer. There was a time we were in public international law class, and one of the students had something to say, and he was quite audacious in the way he went about it, challenging the teacher and thought that the teacher was wrong. And you know, in our part of the world, authority figures don't take that kindly. So I sat back and thought that, this man would react. I was expecting him to react. He listened calmly. And when he was done, he said, I understand where you're coming from. I disagree with you, but we can dialogue on it later. And he won my admiration and respect because that's not a very typical Ghanaian thing, am I lying? Ladies and gentlemen, an associate professor of law, with a round of applause, help me invite Professor Kwejo Epieje-Etia.
Excellencies, honorables, friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to have the platform to do a short presentation on the subject of free speech and academic freedom. Where should we draw the line? To do justice to the topic, I want to re-echo what the president of the Harvard Club said, that Ghana's democracy is in perilous times. And it calls for such platforms and discussions to stimulate the debates as to how we should take our democracy very seriously and ensure that we are able to achieve a democracy that is befitting of our status as a country which was the first country to become independent in the whole of Africa and which has or used to have some good democratic credentials, but is now on the decline. I begin by looking at what are the constituent elements of academic freedom, in line with dealing with the subject of the relationship or the differences between freedom of speech and academic freedom. We talk about the right to science as constituting an important element of academic freedom. And we refer to that in Article 15 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which says that we all have the right to take part in science and to benefit from scientific progress, which is available to all. The second element is the right to education, found in Article 13 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which there's a general comment on that by the committee, and it says that academic freedom is a precondition for the right to education. Third is freedom of thought and expression, found in Articles 18 and 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And the key words here that I want to lay emphasis on is freedom to seek, receive, and impart information or ideas. Most often when we talk about freedom of thought, it is connected to religion, conscience, and that area of rights. However, freedom of thought is also connected to freedom of opinion, in the sense that freedom of thought involves freedom to think. And thinking produces opinion or thoughts, which shapes the way we invent new ideas and knowledge. And it's important that we attach importance to the source of information that informs our thinking and our opinion formation. So it is for this reason that in the wisdom of the framers of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they paid emphasis to freedom to seek and freedom to receive information, so that we are not forced to consume propaganda and so on, which may inform our thinking. But it's thinking freely and coming to our own understandings and developing our own ideas, which are then made to shape the existing knowledge and even to challenge orthodoxy where it becomes necessary. When ideas are imparted, it is supposed to be imparted without any limitations. So the covenant talks about regardless of frontiers, either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art, or through any other media of the person's choice. I now try to draw down to defining academic freedom. But before I do that, I need to mention that academic freedom is influenced by the purpose of the university. Therefore, we should look at the purpose of the university as well as the stakeholders in the academic freedom equation, because academic freedom is linked to the university. Identify 5 main purposes of the university. 1 is truth-seeking, and these purposes of the university are largely connected to the freedom of expression, which we have mentioned not long ago. Truth-seeking involves seeking, receiving, and thinking. And truth-seeking is the pursuit of knowledge or doing research. And then the second purpose of the university is knowledge production. After seeking the knowledge or seeking the information and so on, we develop knowledge out of it. And that connects to opinion, which have also been mentioned as one of the elements of academic freedom. Then 3, dissemination of knowledge to develop critical minds. That is imparting knowledge to students and to the larger society. 4 is application of knowledge to solve societal problems and to advance human progress, which is to imparting to impact the society. And then 5, the use of knowledge to challenge orthodoxy or having a pro-democracy element in the context of academic freedom. Now I define academic freedom to set the tone for our discussion to follow. It is a freedom that is carved out for the academic community, and it is for a particular purpose, to enable access and opportunity to conduct scientific inquiry, generate knowledge, and disseminate the findings thereof through teaching, publication, and application of the findings to promote human well-being. This freedom is to be enjoyed within certain limits. It is not an absolute freedom. And these include subject to public order, professional ethics, social responsibility, but without restraint or the threat of sanctions by government and other power holders or brokers. So in my definition, I try to make the case that academic freedom is a functional necessity. It is functional necessity in the sense that it is not necessarily for the academics to enjoy for its own sake, but academics, students, and the university are supposed to enjoy this freedom to promote certain objectives as defined in the purposes of the university. Now, looking at the stakeholders, we can talk about internal stakeholders and external. Internally, we have the academic community, which is made up of the university, in some cases represented by management, academics, and then students. External actors or stakeholders, we have the states and we have the larger society. So when we break the state into 2, the public sphere and the private sphere, the private sphere is where the university is located. The private sphere is where academic freedom is supposed to be enjoyed. And the private sphere is also where the society is. So the university is part of the society and is supposed to have linkages with the society in terms of what it does and how it does it. And in this way, we are able to see that there should be a limit or a restraint on what the state can do in going into the private space as to how, so that it would not infringe on academic freedom as well as other rights and freedoms. So we can say that when we talk about the internal stakeholders, taking the University of Ghana as an example, when we talk about academic freedom, there are some ways in which this freedom are largely respected but also compromised. And with regard to students, in the context of freedom of expression, part of the laws of the university says that university students need permits to demonstrate inside and outside the campus. Meanwhile, we have a law, the Public Order Act, which says that you don't need permits to go on demonstrations. In some situations also, academics are supposed to seek permission from the university before they can make some pronouncements about the university. Even though academic freedom says that as academics you have the right to criticize the university and to engage in self-governance. Academic freedom, therefore, is a shield so that states are required to respect the space of academia and also to protect academia from being encroached upon by other third parties. It is also a sword. It is a freedom that students, academics, and the university itself are supposed to use to promote democracy in a larger society. And that is where there can be some conflict here and there. But it is important to refer to a major academic freedom document in Africa called the Kampala Declaration on Intellectual Freedom and Social Responsibilities. Article 22 says the intellectual community has a responsibility to struggle for and participate in the struggle of the popular masses, popular forces for their rights and emancipation. Article 9 also deals with academic freedom of expression. It says the intellectual community shall have the right to express its opinions freely in the media and to establish even its own media and means of communication. And that is what we mean by participatory, enjoyment of our participatory rights, which we will elaborate on in a minute before I bring my discussion to a close. Now, when we talk about education, the right to education, it is important to academic freedom, it is important to free the right to participation because, and that is emphasized in the content of the right to education, where it provides inter alia that education shall enable all persons to participate effectively in a free society. And Article 25 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights also recognizes the right to participation. Participation manifests itself in various ways, including the right to vote and to be voted for, the right to access to public services, freedom of expression, association, religion, and so on. It is important to refer to the history of academic freedom in Africa, but I'll just look at the current space where we have, after the fall of communism or the Berlin Wall. Most African countries have come up with references to academic freedom in their constitutions for the first time in the constitutional history of Africa. But it's important how the link between academic freedom and freedom of expression is couched. And I want to refer to the constitutions of 3 countries. First, our own country, Ghana. Article 21(1)(b) says, all persons shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression, which shall include academic freedom. I have 2 problems with this content of the provision on freedom of speech in its relationship to academic freedom. First, as I have tried to point out, there are 3 constituent elements of academic freedom, which includes freedom of expression. So to say that freedom of expression includes academic freedom is not properly couched. Number 2, I've also made a point earlier, and I will come back to that soon, is that academic freedom is not for all persons. Academic freedom is a right and freedom that is specifically located and carved out for the academic community. That is for the university itself, academics, and students. Therefore, to say that all persons are entitled to academic freedom is wrong. When we look at the Zimbabwe Constitution, it somehow even gets murkier. It says every person has a right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom to seek, receive, and communicate ideas and other information. Rightly put when you look at it from the perspective of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. But then it talks about freedom of artistic expression and scientific research and creativity, which takes us rather to Article 15 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Therefore, strictly speaking, it is not a right of freedom of expression. And then finally, it says it also includes academic freedom. Therefore, similar to the Ghanaian situation, every person is entitled to academic freedom, which is not the case. And then in the case of South Africa, it also says everyone has the freedom of the press and the media, freedom to receive or impart information or ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, which again should take us to Article 15 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and therefore not strictly a freedom of expression element. And then academic freedom as part of freedom of expression, but also linked to freedom of scientific research. And freedom of scientific research is actually part of academic freedom. So it becomes redundant in that respect. Finally, on my last slide, I want to identify 4 differences between freedom of expression and academic freedom to set the tone for our discussion. First, I see freedom of expression as universal, while academic freedom is limited to the academic community. And even in that context, if a particular academic doesn't have the expertise in a particular subject area, and he or she makes a general comment, maybe you are a mathematician, but you talk about human rights, it may be seen to be not in your area of expertise, and therefore it will rather be judged whether it is a freedom of expression right that you are, freedom that you are enjoying instead of academic freedom. 2, freedom of expression is valid in all circumstances except where there is an emergency and it becomes a derogable right which can be suspended in its enjoyment. However, academic freedom is duty dependent. It is connected with research, connected with production of knowledge, connected with dissemination of that knowledge and application of that knowledge. The last point, freedom of expression is an individual right, but academic freedom is individual, that is for academics and students, but it can also be a collective right for the larger university. And so on that note, I conclude by saying that there's a lot to discuss about the relationship between the two, and we can also say that there are a number of ways where academic freedom differs from freedom of expression. But without freedom of expression, we couldn't have had academic freedom. Thank you very much for your...
Ladies and gentlemen, you can do it better for Professor Etia. Academic freedom is a sword and it is a shield. It is not the same as freedom of expression, but both can coexist. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just came in, this is Cocktails and Conversation, brought to you by the Harvard Club of Ghana in collaboration with the University of Ghana School of Law. My name is Priscilla Adepa Kwati. I think it's about time we relax a bit. So we have a gentleman here who is good with words. He's a poet, and he's going to give us some spoken word to relax us. Ladies and gentlemen, after that, we would veer into the panel discussion, the reason for which we are here. A round of applause to Negus as he comes on stage.
They say I'm audacious, that I'm fierce and dauntless, that I'm irresistible, that my aura is intimidating and my presence never goes unnoticed. And so I ask, is it my fault that the descendants of Indiwu Rajapa, the warrior king, the spear holder, the conqueror whose bravery broke glass ceilings are my slaves? That I'm a product of the sweat and sperm of my forebears? The cotton looms of my beautiful northern smoke were carefully selected by the best and perfect smoke weavers. My ancestors were the mighty traders who engaged in peaceful merchandise with the people of the Upper Volta. My skin is a mixture of zebra stripes on tortoise shell. My heart is one that eclipses the heart of a lion. My eyes see beyond the horizon of an eagle's. Must you be told that my blood flows from the mysterious river Admanduano, through the black Volta to the white Volta, right into the river Volta. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Negus the Poet. We are here to talk about freedom of speech. So, here you go. Shut up! No, don't tell me to shut up. Don't stifle my creativity, my ingenuity, my innovation. When truth is unspoken, it is only as good as unspoken truth. When truth is replaced by silence, the truth becomes a lie. When people are oppressed and their voices are suppressed, when the loud become quiet and quietness become loud, I shall proclaim, let freedom speak. Let freedom speak. From the new day to breakfast daily, from good morning to good evening, from kokroko to jwasunsem, let freedom speak truth to power, for truth is only truth when spoken. Let freedom speak of injustice, of misrule, of corruption, of cronyism, of nepotism, of dishonesty, of the suffering of the ordinary Ghanaian people, and the greedy distribution of the national cake to friends and families forever. Let freedom speak. Oh, let freedom speak of the rights we have and yet we cannot express, of the voice we have and yet we cannot speak, of the police who should be our friends and yet are not, of the government who should be our headlight and yet is our tail light. Let freedom speak. When justice paves way for injustice and hypocrisy robs off as objectivity, when political party affiliation supersedes nationality, we must let freedom speak. From the media to the courts, from a parliament to the Flagstaff House, freedom must speak, and it must speak loud and clear. Because when freedom speaks, it enhances democracy and fosters creativity, challenges injustice and ensures accountability, facilitates progress and welcomes diversity. But this is what the oppressors hate. And so, let freedom speak. Let it radiate deep from the voice of your box and out through your mouths, your eyes, your ears, and your hands. Let freedom speak. Don't tell me to shut up. Let freedom speak. Don't tell me to shut up. Let freedom speak. Don't tell me to shut up. Let freedom speak. Don't tell me to shut up. Oh yes, let freedom speak. And remind us all of these beautiful lines in our national anthem. Fill our hearts with true humility, make us cherish fearless honesty, and may help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our heart and might forevermore. And help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore. So let freedom speak.
Let freedom speak. Don't what? Oh, did you hear that? Let freedom speak. Don't. So let's do it together. Let freedom. Don't tell me. Don't let nobody tell you to shut up. Ladies and gentlemen, Negus the Poet. A round of applause for him. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, your excellencies, I invite to the podium our panelists for this august occasion. We have the founder and president of Ashesi University. Before the founding of Ashesi University, he worked as a program manager for Microsoft, where among other things, he spearheaded the development of dial-up internet working technologies and gained a reputation for bringing difficult projects to completion. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering economics from Swarthmore College an MBA from UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business, and an honorary doctorate from Swarthmore College, Babson College, and University of Waterloo. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who needs no introduction. Help me welcome, with a thunderous round of applause, Mr. Patrick Ewuah. The next member I would invite to the podium is a member of parliament for the Enyaso Tuom constituency. Okay, his constituents are here, I suppose. He completed St. Peter's Secondary School in 1998, the Brigham Young University in 2004 with a Bachelor of Science in Economics and a chemistry minor. Whilst in the US, he enrolled in pre-medical school and was admitted to University of Ghana Medical School Graduate Entry Program, which he completed in 2013. Prior to doing medicine, he worked for Covidian in North Haven, CT, a surgical device company, which has been bought by Medtronic for 5 years as a post-market surveillance analyst. Ladies and gentlemen, he's already seated. Help me with a thunderous round of applause. Welcome, Dr. Dixon Adumakukisi. Doc, you're welcome. When I started law school, my lecturers would force you to read the law reports. Dr. Bassett, especially. He'd make you read it over and over and over. And that's when I realized that I had fallen in love with some of the people I was reading. One of them was Asha CJ, as he then was, Taylor JSC, as he then was, and this man I'm about to introduce. Ladies and gentlemen, he had a way with words. Sometimes I ask myself whether he studied literature, because he could intertwine the words and weave them in such a way that you finish reading it and you're like, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, a venerable man. A man who used to sit on our highest body, the Supreme Court of Ghana. With a thunderous round of applause, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, help me welcome William Atuguba Sir JSC, fondly called Sir William. Ladies and gentlemen, you can do a better one for him. Your Lordship, thank you so much for honoring our invitation. You are welcome. And now to our moderators. Before we go to our moderators, we have the only female on this panel, a woman who needs no introduction because she's been in our faces. We've heard so much about her. She was our former electoral commissioner. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? Who am I talking about? Ladies and gentlemen, a lawyer and our former electoral commissioner who brought sanity and peace to Ghana when she was an electoral commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, a thunderous round of applause to Charlotte Osei. I should introduce you. And once again, this one, I think I should read his bio so that you know this man is so accomplished. Sometimes I don't know where to start from. He says I should not start. So I'll just go ahead and say the president of the Harvard Club of Ghana, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sangu Dele. He's the reason why you are here. You can do a better one for him. Once again, if you just came in, this is Cocktails and Conversations brought to you by the Harvard Club of Ghana in collaboration with the University of Ghana School of Law. My name is Priscilla Adepade Kwating. You're welcome. Please enjoy.
Hope everyone is doing well, both those of you here and those online. So there's so much to talk about with this topic. And yet we have an hour for the panel to the panelist. So, for the panelists, part of the goal is to put all of you in conversation with each other. So, I will plead with panelists to understand when I'll cut in, to try and draw others in, and to, in the interest of us getting through a lot of material, to try and keep our responses as punchy as possible. There are three parts of this discussion. The first is I want us to have a conversation on freedom of speech. As Prof had outlined, while related, it is not exactly the same thing as academic freedom. So we'll start with freedom of speech. We'll move then to academic freedom. And for the third part of it, we will discuss something that brings the tension of freedom of speech and academic freedom to bear. So we'll first off start with His Lordship. Justice Tuguba, if you could give us a sense from a judicial standpoint of how we should be thinking about freedom of speech, what's guaranteed, as Prof said, in the Constitution, and what are those limits to that freedom?
Thank you. Well, I must say that I do not know where to begin from, but oh, okay. I do not really know where to begin from, but say something, I will. I must. I'm corrected. Really, what is uppermost in my mind is not so much the textual or philosophical underpinnings of what freedom of speech stands for. I'm rather worried about why it is often impeded. What are the underlying causes? Because as for the freedoms, there are limits and textual expressions. Our Constitution, 1992, and all that was said in the opening speech of the chairperson of the board covers it all. Some have read them out. They include expression, thought, academic freedom, and so forth and so forth. Actually, there is no conceivable limit to the expanse of fundamental human rights under the 1992 Constitution, because after listing them out severally, there is the general clause that the freedoms so expressed are not meant to be exhaustive, but cover any form of freedom that is acceptable to real democracy. And so it is difficult to draw specifics and limitations And I praise the architects of that constitution. It was well thought through. They researched into our constitutional past history and military interventions, specifically the infamous case of Riakoto. And that is what I want to emphasize, that the freedoms and the provisions of our Constitution are meant in the context of the infamous and much lamented Riakoto decision to be construed expansively and progressively. And that means, without fear or favor, extending the frontiers of liberty as far as one can legitimately do so. Nonetheless, we know that the freedoms were not meant to be expressed with vandalistic enthusiasm. Those who were in Comal Falls should not feel offended. I was in Comal for myself. I'm using this in a different context from what we used to do in Comal Falls. So before I retired, I remember there was this case, which incidentally our current president argued, before us. There was Republic versus Free Press Limited or something. The editor and the paper were sued for publishing something they thought was criminally libelous or seditious. And the court was moved to strike it down as unconstitutional, the charges leveled against that paper. Well, the court upheld the basic rights of freedom of expression, including the freedom of the press without censorship and so forth, but excluded irresponsible usage of that freedom. And that's my very grave concern. But one of my former colleagues, Ajabeng JSC, said that freedom of expression did not mean freedom to insult as one pleased. Something that is wholesome and good for a country can be rendered rather hateful and oppressive. The modern tendency of freedom of expression is bordering more on a right to abuse rather than to make a constructive point that advances the society in a progressive manner. An example is Mensa Bonsu. I think he was a lawyer and I think a journalist. We all remember the case involving the 31st December revolution, which was disallowed as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court at the instance of, I think, the MPP. In his judgment, Aban, who subsequently became CJ, alluded to something he said was in the editorial column, whereas it was somewhere else. Those who were present thought that later he changed the expression and the location of his reference. It's fair to do that. But then the man went on to say he was a political stooge and all this kind of thing. And that eventually landed him before the same Supreme Court for contempt of court, contempt of scandalizing the court, to be specific. He faced a jail term, I think for 3 months or so. I don't think he would have incurred any such citation for contempt and imprisonment if he had expressed the same sentiments in more restrained and dignified terms, which will sell his message to the public and to well-informed minds to take it up. But here it was, just because of that incident, he said the judge was a political stooge, in the terms, all kinds of invectives. So all our appeal is that these freedoms are there. The Constitution itself is a very solemn and high-placed document. That's why its enforcement and interpretation are reserved to the uppermost court, the Supreme Court. And so those freedoms should be exercised in that context. So these are a few, as our time is not on our side. I don't want to trespass on the preserves of my colleagues. Rather enjoy question time. But going back to what I thought concerns me more than these dimensions of freedom of speech and all academic freedom, whatnot. Bottom line question is, why is it that over and over and over again these freedoms are expressly provided, enshrined, but we cannot enjoy them? That's a fundamental problem to deal with. And I think the problem is that politics seems to have developed into a kind of Bermuda Triangle, not involving the disappearance of airplanes, but the disappearance of fundamental human rights, liberties, democracy. Why does that happen? If that fundamental Bermuda Triangle is resolved, then the freedoms will be stabilized and enjoyed.
The Bermuda Triangle.
So I rest my...
Thank you, Your Lordship. Speaking of... The Bermuda Triangle. This is a segue to bring in our former electoral commissioner, who has been at the center of this Bermuda Triangle. Charlotte, what would you say are some of the most significant threats to free speech in the context of our democracy? And given what His Lordship has said, how should they be confronted?
Thank you, Sangu. Good evening, everyone. I'm not sure I can hazard a solution, but I can speak to what I see as the threats. Following on what His Lordship said, I think that when we were entering this whole Fourth Republican era, we were clearer in our minds what a democracy looked like and the rules of all of us and why we needed freedom of speech and all the media freedoms. At this point, we seem to have lost our sense of direction. So when we talk about the clamping down on freedom of expression and press freedoms, we tend to focus on the use of state power against either journalists or citizens who have criticized the state or said something the state doesn't like. And that is a key issue. It's a problem. And I think what we're seeing now is, if you read the stories that we see that are reported, and you take out the dates and just deal with what is happening, it's very confusing, because it's very similar to the stories we had in the military, when we were under military dictatorships, and that's why we're all concerned. So now, if I spoke here today, and tomorrow I put out that I had been harassed subsequent to this event, even if it was not true, most people would believe me because of the culture we find ourselves in right now. And it's not just the current one. There are instances in all the regimes under the Fourth Republican Constitution. The issue now is that when you add media plurality, which we have corrupted, rather than it being a vehicle for increasing our freedoms, we have allowed politicians to hijack the ownership of the media houses. And so the plurality of the media houses has now become another tool, either for attack or for suppression of press freedoms. So now we've created a very complex web of suppression of free speech. So you have the state against persons, the state against journalists. You have journalists against journalists, because depending on which side of the political divide they are, you would find that a journalist would do a story, an investigative piece, and before we can speak, he's being attacked by other journalists because they are in different political camps. We have media houses against media houses. And increasingly, we're also seeing self-censorship. So if you're a smart journalist, either because you want to protect your salary or you want to protect your liberty, you self-censor, you don't say what you really want to say. And then, of course, we have probably the most prevalent one, citizen against citizen, especially through the use of social media. So we are not even permitting our compatriots to think freely, much less express it. You must take a certain position, or we put you in a certain box, and once we put you in that box, it gives us in our minds the liberty to attack you. So for me, this complex web of suppression of free speech that we have created is collective injury we're doing to ourselves. And it's not held by the fact that security agencies are involved in suppression. So for instance, the police can say that you can prophesy if you're a pastor, but do not cause fear and panic. Who decides what is fear and panic? Are we now going to use the reasonable man test in a criminal matter? And even more worrying is the use of the tool of criminal law to fight cases of defamation, especially when the people who are allegedly defamed are political party, politicians. So for me, these are the issues that bother me, and I think that we are on a very slippery slope. We are doing ourselves collective injury, and in terms of solutions, we need to go back to our core duties as citizens and the respect that we owe to each other and permitting other citizens to express themselves. And maybe if we do that, we can push the state institutions to respect us the same way.
Thank you. You know, between the Bermuda Triangle and politicians owning the media, Honorable Dr. Kisi, they've been screaming your name. You know, as a politician and a member of parliament, defend your people. Defend your class of politicians.
Yeah. So thank you, and once again, let me commend you for your work so far. I'm very impressed. I would say a story of a case of a broken plate and link it to our culture. I have suffered in many instances because of, I think, of our culture more so than our legal opinions in this country. And why do I say the case of a broken plate? I have a friend in Connecticut. His children that grew up here tend to lie when they break a plate. His children that grew up in Connecticut are open to tell their parents, I broke a plate. Why is that the case? The retribution we meter out after the event or the oration is a problem. And in the US, they'll say, oh, okay, too bad, next time don't break it. In my country, Ghana, you feel some lashes. True or false? Same plate, broken plate. So our children respond in the negative because of the retribution. And other kids will respond in the positive because daddy will just say, oh, it's a plate, don't break it. Now, I'm not here to defend the state, pardon me. But I also want to share that sometimes in the trying to be liberated, we ought to be cautious. Many have died for just saying the world was round. True or false? Yes. And many also died for doing the right thing in science. Madame Curie, who discovered radioactive substances, unfortunately, in expressing academic liberty, died from the environment of doing her own discovery. So we need to be guided sometimes. I would also share the story of Werner, I think, Theodore, who was able to put medicine straight to the heart. His professor sacked him. That is academic liberation. Only for him to win a Nobel Prize for what a professor sacked him for. So sometimes you get banned for doing the right thing. Sometimes you get blessed. And in this country of ours, we ought to look at the broken plate scenario. We all either enforce the liberty or through our culture. Tigo used to say, express yourself. But that thing, express yourself, is a problem because of our culture. When kids come from Europe, they express themselves. But in the Ghanaian culture, if you're a child and you're expressing yourself, your parents, from a parliamentary standpoint, where parliamentarians are supposed to be the voice and representative of the people, sometimes you have to be guarded. Because our culture plays a huge role. And we either, after today, walk out of here as enforcers of the liberty, or rather use our culture to put us in that Bermuda triangle. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can see why he's a successful politician. He has sweet-talked us and punted the football to Patrick, blaming the schools. But we won't let him get away with it. We'll come back to it. Honorable, should politicians be allowed to own media, given what's happening? Direct question.
I wasn't going to go there, but listen, we're looking at New York. A rich man says for students protested, he's taking his money out of the institution. This is New York, today, not yesterday. Murdoch owns Fox. It's political. This is America. So I will plead with you. The media is an estate in a way. Legislative is another arm of government. Judiciary is. And then the executive. I think that politicians may be businessmen first. And by virtue of being maybe businessmen first, may have a right to own what they choose to own.
Are you troubled that so many of our politicians own media houses and there's concern that we no longer have the same sort of independence of the fourth estate?
Fortunately for us, no Ghanaian owns TikTok. No Ghanaian owns social media, really. So it begs the question, what are people actually consuming? I think the content more so than the ownership. That is my thinking. And I think that we are at liberty to consume what we choose to. Nobody will tell you which station to watch, really. We are at liberty. So I think looking at even the story of EcoBank and the story of GCB. EcoBank came and then GCB had to change. True. The same with Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, which is the government authority on broadcasting. If government does the good thing, no private entity, be it 104.3, be it Radio Gold, whatever institution, would operate and only get traction based on how creative they are. And I think that to some extent, political figures owning radio stations might be injurious to the average Ghanaian to some extent. But then, the key question is that the alternatives are also there. And some of us tune into CNN, others tune into Fox News. The unfortunate thing is some people consume what they want to consume. And no matter what, in some homes, when you turn on Peace FM, they'll turn it off. In some homes, when you turn on Radio Gold, they'll turn it off. I'm just making a point. So sometimes it is the home that decides what they want to consume. But invariably, in as much as the radio stations are at liberty to project and promote what they choose to, you rightly said that, unfortunately, there's been some attacks to media persons, not even at their home, but during program. And I think that is unfortunate. And that was meted out by operatives of the state in some instances, or individuals who felt peeved by the comment or commentary that was going on. So it is worrisome to an extent, but Ghana is still the land of the free. And I would hope that we can guard it and be wary and mindful that even in liberty, there are boundaries. even in liberty, there are boundaries. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable. Patrick, we want to bring you in here. Culture has been mentioned, and how we are raised has been mentioned. What role do and or should universities play in promoting civic engagement, critical thinking, and fostering an environment that will be respectful of diverse viewpoints?
Well, I think that the most important thing for us to pay attention to is the purpose of our work. And the purpose of the system of governance that we have, the purpose of free speech, etc. And if you really think about that purpose, then you recognize that one of the most important things that we do as universities, is to prepare the future leadership of a nation. And we should be preparing that leadership core to be people who are civically minded, people who are going to make interests in the best interests of society, and people who empower everyone around themselves and not threatened by that. And so even the way we teach is important. If you enter a university where I was really struck by the comment that students here need to be given permission to speak. Now, if a university is doing that, it is not really educating people who are going to then turn out and empower others. And if we don't empower our citizens, we disempower the nation. Because the nation is made up of people. On the question of free speech or academic freedom, if in a university we deal with both. We have to respect the free speech rights of everyone in our community as individuals, and we have to protect the academic freedom as was described. Both of those rights have limits, right? So, for example, free speech on a university campus does not give someone a right to harass others or to create a hostile environment for others, right? And in the same way, academic freedom does not mean, for example, if a professor has been hired to teach statistics, but they're very interested in art. So in their statistics class, they spend all their time talking about art. You know, they're going to have an issue with the administration of the university, because that's not what we hire them to do. It doesn't mean that they can't talk about art, they can't write about art, they can't do art and promote their art outside of that particular class where they're supposed to be teaching statistics. And I just share that example to say that there are limits that we should all pay attention to. I want to touch a little bit on the comment that Honorable Member of Parliament made about the culture of Ghana. We had an instance where our students were doing community service in a rural school, and they had helped deploy computers to the school, installed software, and worked with the teachers on how to give access to technology to students. They came back one week and found all the kids sitting in this computer lab with their hands on their laps, not actually using the computers. And they would only use the computers when the teacher told them to. And it was very puzzling to them. It's not what kids do. When you put a computer in front of a kid, they're all over the place, they're exploring. And so they're just wondering what's going on. And they saw a kid who didn't wait for instructions start to type something and have the student wrap their knuckles with the cane. So kids learn very quickly not to explore. And we talked about the freedom of speech, academic freedom, including the freedom to seek, right? The freedom to speak, to explore. Speech is not only what you say with your voice. Speech also includes actions. Voting is speech. And so when we think about protecting this freedom of speech, we should really think about it in a broad way in terms of empowering people to really pursue their aspirations, to become the best of themselves, and in that way to become, productive citizens of the nation.
Charlotte, bringing it back to you. We're in an election year. And oftentimes during an election year, there's a lot of heated rhetoric. At the same time, it's very important for us to be able to express ourselves freely, as guaranteed by the Constitution, and also as a means for us to be able to share what we think and share our opinions. How do we balance this deep desire to be able to express ourselves freely with some of the concerns, especially with the digital platforms we have today, where you can have the spread of online misinformation? How do we balance that to make sure that we're not overly restricting free speech, but at the same time we're addressing some of the challenges that result from unbounded speech?
It's very clear that Sangu wants to get me into trouble today. As you all know, I do quite a bit of work in the field of elections, especially in Africa. This question reminds me of one story I had. So normally when we go for elections, we meet and there's an exchange of war tales. In a country in Africa that we all know and we all seem to hold in very high regard, my friends at the AU told me how they went for an election observation mission. And as is normal after those missions, they called the media to come so that they could present their report. And nobody showed up. And so they had to make calls and people had to be cajoled into coming. So eventually some journalists showed up. And the head of mission proceeded to present the mission observation report. And when they finished, they asked for questions. They wanted to engage. And nobody was saying anything. And eventually one journalist raised his hands and said, "Your Excellency, you called us to come and listen to your report, not to ask questions." So that takes us back to the issue of culture. And I violently disagree with the Honorable Member of Parliament that when a culture is so inimical to our peace and our stability and our national cohesion, that we should continue in those cultural practices. And that's really what it comes down to. His Lordship used the term vandalistic enthusiasm. And the culture now is that, especially if you work in a media house owned by a powerful politician, or you want to advance very quickly in your political party, you must display vandalistic enthusiasm, especially when you're dealing with your political opponents. And so every morning we wake up to this boxing ring set up, and they're punching. And it's become so normalized that we think this is how our politics should continue. And so, to go back to your question, in an election year, we all expect that it's going to get worse. And when you have political parties that have a profession, they've developed a profession, and this is only in Ghana that I know it exists, called foot soldiers, and then they have the armies that operate on social media, and their job is basically attack the other side. That is not a healthy democratic culture. So what we're doing is, not only are we silencing the opponent, we're also silencing any voices of neutrality, any objective voices in our society, because now you are afraid to even state an opinion because you would be attacked and you would be abused. It is said that democracy dies in darkness, but it also dies in silence. And what we're doing cannot inure to our benefit, and it cannot inure to our national stability and cohesion. I think we've lost so much that it is time we start asking ourselves, is this political culture serving us? And like the Honorable Member of Parliament said, maybe we start by being engaged citizens and tuning off those stations that keep doing this. And so maybe the owners and the practitioners will learn that this is not what we want. But the problem could be that it's become like a drug. And because we are fed this morning, afternoon, night, we've all become addicted to it, and it's been normalized in our system. And so, like any drug, you're only going to require higher and higher amounts. So I don't know where this is going to end. But we need the political leaders to really sit and ask themselves whether even for them this inures to their benefit, because I don't think it does. And the real damage is that all our political leaders, without exception, are losing credibility. So even if what you're saying is true, even if it is in our interest, you can be sure that 45% of the country are rejecting it just based on political colors. So we are losing a lot by what we're doing to ourselves. And Honorable needs to go back to Parliament when they decide to reconvene, and they need to sit there and start talking among themselves and asking themselves whether the path we're on, which they are championing and leading, whether it really inures to our benefit. I think they need to start the discussion.
Democracy dies in silence. Patrick, I saw a facial expression.
Yes, so as you were speaking, I just reflected on what the Honorable Member of Parliament said, and the examples he shared were from the United States, right? So Fox News, CNN, and a democratic dynamic in the US now, which is quite contentious. The competition is quite heated there. And that is the one that we tune a lot into here. How many of us tune into the politics of, say, Switzerland or Denmark? We don't. It's not very loud. It's not projected very loudly in the world. But it seems to me that perhaps that should interest us. We ask ourselves, why is it that in those countries it's not so heated? Maybe that's what we should study more, about what the democratic culture is in those countries. We should also, I think, sit down and have a conversation among ourselves, not in an election year, but after the election, really studying our own history and how decisions were made in the past, and really thinking about what kind of country we want in the future, like what's our purpose, and collaborate with each other to come up with a new paradigm for ourselves. But that takes It takes courage, it takes time, and people have to be willing to do that work. If that, I think that we can end up with with a political system and an engagement in politics that empowers people and that will feel like we're on a good path.
As a lawmaker and a policymaker, what are the key considerations you and your colleagues look at when you're drafting legislation that impacts free speech and academic freedom?
You know, this morning I met with former Minister of Information in relation to the Right to Information Act. And let me say one thing. In all of this, Ghanaians don't celebrate milestones. And I think that too is another problem. The good stories don't sell. There are many positives, many, to the extent that any well-meaning Ghanaian can have access to very potent details that were hitherto not available. And then the other thing too is that quite clearly, many a times the information is there, but some just choose not to consume. That is maybe an African thing, maybe a cultural thing, and I wanted to clear one thing. I was not saying that our culture necessarily is right. I was rather saying that we all need to double check our culture because we are enforcing the limitations on freedom of expression. In the sense that when I have broken a plate, in one culture, they would encourage you to do the right thing and not break another one. In another culture, just to tap on the computer, you get smacked. You get my whole point. I mean, it comes back to the same thing. So we're more than the politicians in this country. Bear in mind, there are fewer politicians than the many. And unfortunately, there's one bit where the majority tend to rather propagate and blame it on the politician. Forgive me. Because I've always asked myself, there are fewer politicians in this country than the majority. So I am pleading with us, when we walk out of here today, do introspection of how our culture, through you, is limiting freedom of expression. And we would realize that many of us are at fault. As to when you sit in a Trotsky, which some of us haven't sat in a long time, in the trotro, you can really gauge freedom of expression because people can either insult the driver for raising a topic or insult the mate for complaining about fuel prices, depending on the people who are in that vehicle. So I'm only pleading that all of us have a say. And let me just add this. Any bill policy that is administered to the Ghanaian people go through a lot of rumination. And what I mean by that is that at any point in time, any individual can add a voice to whatever policy government intends to hand to the Ghanaian people. And let me say that there are low limitations. Sometimes, personally, some of us gauge the sentiments of the country based on the volume of chatter on issues and then make recommendations to the government that drop this or push this. And I must say that even in my constituents, let me just share one thing here. I told people that when the president is talking at, the State of the Nation's address, if my constituents jam the internet with our road issues, people will pay attention. I hope you get my point. So the onus is on a lot of us to add to the policies of this country. We certainly, all politicians or the legislative, which is the representation of the people, takes in mind the things, the sentiments, the thoughts of the people, but bottom line, nobody loves taxes. That one there. Nobody. And one of the unfortunate business of the legislative is to generate revenue for the government. And that is where sometimes, you know, the e-levies will come in, and that one, it is overzealous expression of speech by two factions. And that one too can be injurious to the state, as we saw in the e-levy scenario. So in concluding, I think that the policies are largely based on what is in the interest of the country, and no citizen, and I know the likes of Patrick and even former judiciary senior most member love to pay taxes. It's just the nature. And we tend to be doling out taxes as legislative members because we feel that the public chest needs refueling. And not just feeling, it needs to, it thrives on taxes and loans. And
we won't get into the debate of how prudent the government has been in managing public purse. But I do want to go into what has generated a lot of controversy for Parliament. The Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2021. I would be remiss not to. Now let's be very clear about the scope. We are not going to discuss the morality of the bill. We're only strictly going to discuss the provisions dealing with freedom of speech and academic freedom. Those are the only parts of the bill we're going to talk about, because that's what this program is about. So if we go to, I have a copy of the bill here. Section 1, this act applies to a person, VII, an ally. An ally interpretation, section 2, is defined as a non-queer person who supports or advocates for the queer community. There's also a section which mentions that, section 12, that says a person who through media, technological platform, technological account, or any other means produces, procures, markets, broadcasts, disseminates, publishes, or distributes, or uses an electronic device, etc., commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a term of imprisonment of not less than 5 years and not more than 10 years. So someone who tweets that I am an ally of the queer community. My question for you, Honorable, does this bill impugn on their freedom of expression as guaranteed by our 1992 Constitution?
The key thing here, let me add the voice of the majority leader. Mind you that some of us are of the school of thought that just as you don't send a drug addict to a drug house, it is important that if we intend to do some rehabilitation, that we rather stall the imprisonment of people, but then look to an avenue of social support psychological help and interventions. But these things, as were proposed by the majority leader now, Honorable Afenyomakin, were struck down. And I think it will see the day another time for this to be, more clearly discussed. Because, and mind you, let me be very clear here, that when bills are worked on, even within one caucus, that are disparaging thoughts, in the sense that not all minority may necessarily be in support of this 5-year jail sentence, and not all majority caucus may be in support. The overarching thing with regards to this, which was the genesis of my earlier discussion, was the cultural bit. And even when representatives have a certain view, we go to Parliament to express the sentiments of the population we represent. So I, for one, may like eating frogs, but if the constituency I represent dislike frogs, I better not go promoting frog eating if I want my votes. Please, are you understanding me?
Yes.
So a lot of us are at the mercy of the culture of the populace we represent. We are not necessarily at liberty to do only as we please, because in a 4-year cycle, you go back to your constituents to seek their indulgence. So to conclude on this matter, yes, the boundaries in the Constitution that protect grouping, association, expression will be dented to an extent because of some of these, let me say, position to jail. People who advocate, promote something that might not be culturally acceptable.
Right. So we will come to His Lordship for his views on the freedom of expression element here. But before we do, I want to come back to you again, Honorable. Promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill. The preamble to this bill talks about the need to protect the Ghanaian family. Some people online have said that one of the greatest threats to the stability of Ghanaian families today comes from side chickism. Would you and your colleagues in Parliament be in favor of similar jail time for men and women who commit adultery and or have children outside the confines of marriage, in contravention of our culture, in contravention of the Bible, and in clear contravention of what would inure to the positive benefit of our family values? The women constituents are asking.
The She movement. In fact, I liked one of our professors in medical school. He was called Sticker. He'll stick to you and ask you all the questions. As you dodge, he comes back to you. I feel like you're really on me, but I will stick my neck out and be very clear as I make some things very clear to all of us. Not all things are necessarily permissible if you use law. And not all things that are even permissible are beneficial. And I'll cite cigarettes, okay? The Surgeon General says, and there are rules in public, we know all the problems with cigarette smoking. The laws are there, underage people are not permitted, and the consequences are there. The laws will permit people to do to an extent, what they choose to do. If by virtue of the population in this country and there's an edge for anybody to propose that legal ramifications be done or be impugned to things that we have not taken into the legal domain. I mean, that is what the legislative branch is there for. So I even argue that people are at liberty to promote the original tradition in this country where polygamy was somewhat acceptable in some quarters. You understand? So both are available. And I think that if you have the funds and the wherewith to even promote or push the agenda that the Ghanaian culture was initially one that people, some sections of this country, and let me be very clear with you, nothing against the northern culture, but I think there are more northerners with more wives than southerners. I stand to be corrected.
No, it's more, so you'd have to look at it more from a religion perspective, right? So
Oh,
you
okay.
take the Upper West, for example, which is over 90% Catholic. Reverend Father here will tell you that canon law will not allow polygamy in that context.
So, but growing up, I mean, so I think that, let me be clear that if tomorrow somebody feels strongly that they want to bring to law or bring to the fore further prosecutions of people who are side chicks, it will be looked at just as this current thing on LGBTQ has been looked at. But then, mind you, pushing a bill through Parliament is no easy task. And what we've done just recent, I must say, with credence to the Speaker of Parliament to an extent, has just been successful because of his also involvement. Because there are many propositions on the books that have not even, seen any progress, simply because there are no hands up pushing or pulling it through the nuances. So I think, let me be very clear, the Ghanaian Parliament is open and ready for any private bills or governmental bills, in as much as people push it. But let me be very clear also about one key thing that has been a concern. The president of this country spoke in clear terms outside the shores of this country that looking at the challenges of our nation, where the Indians are on the moon, other people we grew up with are doing monumental things, and we still have manholes. He felt that we were not ready to make this front and center, and that Ghana will be ready in the foreseeable future to maybe address this proper human family scenario. And that was not understood, because he felt that we have other priorities, which is basic education, basic amenities, and that's what we are struggling with in Ghana. And to adapt an issue from the Europeans and the Americans simply because they have achieved and done so much, have their light on, water flowing, and we are rushing to adapt, let me say, something that is their problem now. I think that was misunderstood.
Yeah.
So we need to be mindful of the fact that whatever it is you are bringing in the future, we need to look at the cost on the state, and will it be to the benefit of the greater good?
So we're only looking at this purely, we're not making any comparative analysis with any other global actor. We're looking at this through the eyes of our own 1992 Constitution and strictly from a standpoint of freedom of speech and academic freedom. Section 3 goes on to say that, and I'll turn to your lordship, Section 3 also adds that the following persons or institutions shall, within the jurisdiction of the persons or institutions, promote and protect the proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values specified in Section 2 of this Act. And it includes among the list a teacher or any other educational or religious instructor, and also adds the media and the creative arts industry. Your lordship, does this impugn on freedom of speech and academic freedom as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution?
I think the answer to your question can be a rolled up one, in the sense that is the act itself or the sections you have read necessarily unconstitutional. If the act as it stands, read as a whole, is not unconstitutional, then it follows that the other provisions are not unconstitutional. Of course, when you're talking about fundamental human rights, the essential principle has always been that it should be a balancing act. You weigh the pros and cons of what is at stake. An objective, a legal objective, enacted by law to be attained, can be wholesome and yet go too far. If the extent to which it has gone is not necessary for the attainment of its object, then it is excessive. If what the act stands for is acceptable, and I assume it's acceptable by and large in Ghana, then it has to be propagated. And those sections about teachers and whatnot, just to propagate the law, to encourage its observance. I don't think that putting a duty on somebody to advance a healthy objective is inimical to that person's right, because the Constitution makes provision. All the rights expressed there are subject to limitations and exceptions in favor of public morality, public interests, cultural values, and so forth. And so that is the litmus test. The only part I'm not too sure of is the first aspect you threw at me, that if a person who is not a queer person says that is an ally of a queer person, and that is criminalized, does it invade his right to freedom of speech? It's an interesting thing. Look, it's quite clear and it's endemic, I think, in almost all legal systems. When an act is illegal, is criminalized, aiding and abetting it is also criminalized. And aiding and abetting is widely expressed under our code. Very widely expressed in many forms. Either directly or indirectly aids, purposely facilitates, etc., etc. And in my early years of the study of the law, I have come across an English decision that talking is an act. So the question is whether you can aid and abet a crime through talking. Sometimes it can. If somebody is going to beat up, yes. Oh, sorry. In my court days, we are not using mics, so that judicial culture is still afflicting me. I apologize. Somebody is going to attack his neighbor. You say, oh, go ahead. Give it to him. Give it to him. You are aiding and abetting. My difficulty with the spectrum of that provision is, those who are born like that, or those who have gotten into it through medical impairment. Somebody expresses sympathy for such people. Is he to be suppressed? Is that the true intendment of the act, the purpose of it? So it depends. If a person got into that situation through bad upbringing, and a bystander says, oh, I have sympathy for this person, in that context, because he says he knows why he got messed up in it. Should such a person be suppressed? He ought to, if he's encouraging that person to persist in it, rather than to talk him out of it, to advise him to go for counseling and that kind of thing. And I would have thought that, the situations ought to be rather carefully studied. There are those situations when you look at the backgrounds, ought not to be imprisoned rather than to be assigned to medical houses for treatment over time. So the blanket operation of it indiscriminately can be an overdrive. That has to be watched. Now, To digress a bit, happy that from our interaction, I've seen the source of the Bermuda Triangle I complained about. My sister here has thrown big light. The ownership of the media houses by the politicians. In the first place, if my good friend to my left to help me to answer the question, with what intent do politicians establish and own media houses? Time is against us, but at some other forum, I intend to, I've expressed it at Cape Coast some 2 years ago, and I stand solidly by it, that many countries in Africa, let us for the moment limit ourselves to Ghana. Ghana is a country. It's so laid down in the constitution, its composition, the regions, all that are specified. It's constituted by the constitution. So it's a country, it's a state. But, excuse me to say, I don't think it's a nation. I may not be very articulate in this because the political science people. But when I was in first year, this same Legon, were troubled with elective subjects. Our horizon should be wide, shouldn't just focus on law alone. So we were forced to take an elective subject. And I was trying to fumble with philosophy. I didn't know. A good Samaritan, a senior, overheard me and he warned me out of it. So I dodged to the political science department. And, well, we were not happy to be saddled with this type of thing because we were admitted to do law. We're coming to do that. And now they were foisting this over us. So anyway, we used to attend these lectures, not very deeply, but to the extent that we could scrape through the FUE, the first university exams. If I recollect well, Professor BDG Folsom was at pains to distinguish between a nation or nationalism and mere statehood. And I think his emphasis was that in a nation, all loyalties melt down to the supremacy of the common interests represented by the state organization expressed in the Constitution. This country is not a nation. And that is at the bottom of most of our problems, the failures of our democratic experiments. There's no conscious effort to unite this country as one people. Like the later champions said, one nation, one people, one destiny. Nobody talks about these things now. In fact, ethnicity, chronism, and so forth are exploited whenever, well, with apologies to him, a politician sees any avenue that will fetch him votes, he will use it. Whether it is healthy to nation building or not. And we can't blame them alone. We have aiders and abettors from the citizenry, serial callers. They are paid to say anything contrary to all the truth and morality, conscience and fear of God. advance their myopic interests and building the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A round of applause. We're now moving into the Q&A section. We'll have Prof. kindly join us. And hasn't this been exciting so far? So we have a number of great questions. I am going to read them out, and I'll assign the questions to different panelists. We have to stop in 13 minutes to move on to the parts of the program so we can close at 8:30 for, this is cocktails and conversations. So far, we've only had conversations, and we need to make sure that especially some of the young people here who I know came for cocktails, get their cocktails as well. So, one question, this will be for Patrick. Artificial intelligence allows machines/computers to generate text, ideas, images, and indeed speech. How does generative AI contribute to the weakening or strengthening of human free speech? And does restricting AI impede the academic freedom of computer scientists? That will be for Patrick. For Prof, if academic freedom pivots on relevance and powers given the universities by the society, how do we justify inquiries into important issues society does not consider relevant? Example, can a sociologist do research into understanding identities or sexuality in Ghana? Honorable, this was directly to you, so it's not me assigning. This one is not me assigning, they wrote your name. In fact, there are two directly to you. The first says, is the Honorable MP equating adultery to polygamy? He should please clarify. The second says, to the Honorable Dr. Dixon Kisi, in light of your submission, are you saying you are trading fundamental human rights, academic freedom, and freedom of speech for unilateral interests in your seats? Charlotte, the question for you is, FEC versus Citizens United declared money as speech. In Ghana, this assumption is implicit. Money indeed speaks and speaks loudly. How should we tackle this aspect of speech, money, in politics and policy making? We'll start with Prof.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, society has a big role to play in academic freedom as well as in the freedom of expression. Because it's the society that, at the end of the day, determines from the cultural angle, starting from there, what should constitute our understandings of rights and freedoms. And I take this opportunity to contest the position on the cultural dimensions in our society, which, as has been argued, infringe on our human rights. I think that is not totally correct. There are a lot of ways where our culture's ideas of rights and freedoms have helped hold the society together and help us to advance and develop important elements of democracy, which unfortunately colonialism came to denigrate and put aside. It's a proverb, for example, which says that, express myself, you are a murderer. That certainly talks about freedom of expression. So, talking about where there might be a clash between what the society expects and what academics may also want to, a different direction they want to go. I think that's what the question is, it seems to drive. I think there has to be a balance because at the end of the day, like I said, society is supposed to benefit from what is generated in the classroom and what is generated in the office of the academic as knowledge. And so the knowledge should be of relevance to the society. And if that balance is not there, then we are in trouble. But at the end of the day, it should not be the government standing in the place of the society and dictating how research should be done or what research should be done. If academics control the research agenda, they are able to determine what are the needs of the society. And that is what we call self-determination in the context of academic freedom. So that they will be able to determine the frontiers, and certainly there will be a point where there will be understanding as to what will be relevant for the society and what academics can do in terms of ensuring that at the end of the day society benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Patrick, your question on AI.
Well, machine intelligence doesn't have agency. It's just a tool. And, so I would say that the way we think about AI, it's a very powerful tool, and technology amplifies human intent. It is important that we think about the human intent on how we use technologies. AI can help us in many, many ways, in healthcare, in designing our cities, in designing and building infrastructure, in agriculture, in education. It can have many social benefits. And so it is important that we think about it that way. I don't see that the use of generative AI should be looked at from a free speech point of view. We should be looking at it from the point of view of how do we use technology responsibly for the development agenda of our society.
Thank you, Patrick. Next, we'll have Charlotte respond to money in politics and how we should tackle that aspect of speech.
It's a very interesting question. And I don't think it's even peculiar to Ghana. Money speaks everywhere. And the Bible even says that money answers all things. So, the challenge we have is the extreme monetization of our politics. But there's two sides to it. The politician is giving for a certain benefit. The citizen is receiving. So we cannot just chastise the one who gives and ignore the one who receives. Both are culpable in this matter. And it also comes down to law, because they also tell us it's culture to give. So this is a clear place where we need the intervention of law. Everywhere, in every society, there are, most democracies that have thrived, that have sustained themselves, there are very clear laws and limitations on fundraising in politics, receiving, giving of monies in politics. And we've reached the point where we absolutely must have those laws restricting how politicians raise money, making them account to us for the monies they raise for politics and how they utilize that money. And if we can criminalize sexual rights, we definitely can criminalize this.
Thank you, Charlotte. Honorable, I know the air condition has not been the best, but you sweated a lot today. But it comes with a job of being a member of parliament. So your two questions. The first is asking for clarification about, are you equating adultery to polygamy?
No. I wasn't. I was just citing other examples, and the fact that I was even going beyond adultery to the legal aspect of which is polyandry, polygamy, and all of that. So I was actually stretching it to say that there's room in the legislative arm for whatever it is Ghanaians see to be in their interest, as long as they can bring the proposition, make it a bill, and be assented to. But it takes l'argent, it takes money to do that. So anybody who's at liberty to come out with a proposal against side
Chickism.
There's also side men. So whatever side, whatever side.
Sidism.
Yes, I want to be gender neutral here, so forgive me. If you are for it, bring the money that goes with promoting it, and we will be ready to let it stand.
Great.
Now, the other key question which somebody had was that if the politicians were, as it is, foregoing merit, or shall I say, things that are in the utmost interest of the country, and selling it for cheap or for votes. Now, that whole thing of egg before chicken or chicken before egg comes here. If you don't do what is needful to become the people's representative, you cannot then shepherd the rules of this country. So the question is that, what do you do? From my only 3 years in Parliament, I think that I've been able to, as it is, shape some of the policies in this country, and it has only happened because I've been granted the opportunity to be there. And until you're there, you can't appreciate how your input can impact several lives. So I think that at some point in time, you have to, as it is, try not to burn bridges, to be in that position, to be able to make impact. And I'm not saying that do the wrong things to get there to make impact. But we are largely a reflection of the community society we live in. And let me not say that politicians are self-righteous people, but to a large extent, we are not in any island. We are Ghanaians first. We are ordinary people first. We are residents in this country. We only just make a decision to do politics so that we can impact the rules of this land. And by no means are we aliens. So I think that overall, like I said, we fail to appreciate milestones. Comparing where Ghana was to today, I think that our democracy is maturing and is better. And I must say that the 8th Parliament has really pushed Ghana to almost, I think, the limits that were unimaginable. A hung parliament to a large extent, a speaker of parliament from the opposition. I mean, let me say, all the bad things that could happen with our democracy, to some extent, have happened in one breath, if you understand, to the extent that, as it is, the speaker's decision has forestalled many ministers from getting their confirmation. You know, these are things that were just unimaginable in the thinking of statistics. So I'm just saying that Ghana, in simple terms, is maturing. We are pushing democracy, and no well-meaning politician will sell Ghana for cheap. No well-meaning politician. And ultimately, we are a reflection of the people we serve. Ultimately.
Can we give a round of applause to our panelists? I mean, this has been just an extraordinary, intellectually stimulating conversation. I mean, we've heard everything from the Bermuda Triangle to the defense of the Bermuda Triangle. We've heard about how democracy dies in silence. We've heard about that there are good stories out there, and good stories don't sell. But there are some good things we need to celebrate about our democracy. We've spoken about free speech and what are the limitations, constructive speech, academic freedom, but those limits also where you can't have harassment and hostile environment. Of course, we had a brilliant context of illuminating both those concepts and the differences by Prof. And we've spoken also about the balancing act. And finally, in spite of what our president told us, that sika impediti, that l'argent n'aime pas le bruit, we have learned from Parliament that if you want to put an end to sidism, bring some l'argent, call up Parliament, and the sika can make things happen. Can we give another round of applause to the panelists? And the panelists should kindly hold on for a second before they leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is Cocktails and Conversations brought to you by the Harvard Club of Ghana in collaboration with the University of Ghana School of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panelists and our distinguished moderator. I'd invite to the podium the Vice President of the Harvard Club of Ghana, in the person of Christian, to give some awards out for us. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a round of applause for me. Appreciation Award with gratitude from the Harvard Club of Ghana presents. This award is in recognition of your support of our event, Free Speech and Academic Freedom. Where do we draw the line? Ladies and gentlemen, this award is being given to Professor Kwejo Apieje Titia. As I previously mentioned, one of the reasons, for me, this is my personal opinion, that one of the reasons why Ghana saw peace and enjoyed peace when she was electoral commissioner was solely because of her. That's my personal opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte Osei. Thank you, Ms. Osei, for coming. And to our MP who has been so grilled today. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Dixon Kisi, MP for Enya Soutum constituency. This one goes to the man who has transformed education in Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Patrick Iwa. You don't give the phone to his lordship. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, to His Lordship, whom I admire so much. Your Lordship, you know, I've read you so many times. I've read you so often. I feel like I know you already. And I think other people here would relate to this, that we feel like we know him from his writing. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Lordship, William Atiguba. All members of the panel will stand for a group photograph. And then there's one special Harvard alum we need who is coming to give us a performance. You don't want to miss out on this one.
Please hold on. Yeah. All right.
Please do a better one for them as they descend. Thank you for gracing our occasion. Thank you for the conversations. We are grateful. There's a man, so we have a surprise act, and he's a Harvard alum. He's a rapper who went to Harvard. Can you imagine? Ladies and gentlemen, the man at the back, give it up to Manifest. Oh, you can do a better one for Manifest. You can really do a better one for Manifest.
How's everybody doing tonight? I think it's about freedom of speech, right? But you have to be accurate. I did not go to Harvard. Freedom of speech has to be accurate. I'm very happy to be here with you. I engage in a practice that absolutely enjoys this freedom of speech matter. So today I'm going to ask you to help me practice my freedom of speech. So you're going to be my choir for today. Can you help me out, please? It's quite simple. You just only need to know a single word to be the choir. The word is suffer, okay? So if I point to you, you say suffer all together. So you say, whew, that was like 2 people. Have you had dinner? Okay, cocktails are after. Just master some courage to say suffer with me. When I point, you say, so when I say something like, okay, I know you haven't eaten, blah, 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 you say, okay, cool. DJ, let's go. You know, we can do even better. Can everybody just stand on your feet for just a few minutes? You can shake some leg. All right. Can you play, please? My choir is on their feet. This is amazing. I have a bunch of intellectuals as my choir. This is a moment for me. Cameraman, please make sure you take this. Turn it up a bit, please. Can you turn it up? Turn the music up. It's okay. I think he's suffering over there. They suffer from the man out there. Okay. Are you okay? I could actually just turn it off. You are suffering. We'll do it without you. Okay, turn it off. Can you turn it off? Oh, are you good now? Okay, can everybody hear? Okay, I hear some people snapping. I like that already. It's more than a choir, it's a band as well. Gary soakings for breakfast, noodles for supper. Gotta eat proper, but my pockets ain't dapper. Junk food manics, economics is a bluffer. Need to go organic on my health, man. As I grew old, I was told to be tougher. Gotta shoot the 5 to survive, but I'm a rapper. No doubt, if the shots bring out braka, I ain't going out like a sucker, am I? If you got a name like Muhammad or Mustafa, flying might be tougher. My sympathies, brother, cause since towers fell, it's been hell if you other. Like Benjamin Linus, your grind is bound to. Baboon, they chop way, monkey, they suffer. Tension, they my inside like Ghana, they play soccer. Success in relatives, child. Answer what first the issue. No brag go busy if you. Kayo, they suffer. Taxi driver, they suffer. Musician, they suffer. Opposition, they suffer. Immigrant, they suffer. Bugger self, they suffer. You've never known joy if you've never had it. Villager, they suffer. Brook rapper, they suffer. Priest know they suffer, but small boys, they suffer. Jesus Christ, I'm so nice I shouldn't suffer. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy. Those of you who drive. Sucks getting caught up in traffic in rush hour. Wish I had magic or teleporting power. Late for this interview, my fear getting louder. My chances of getting this job are gonna. And yeah, mannerisms like Ebe, Abba. Got these Yankee folks on the jokes. I'm not bothered. No, nah, the kid is tapper, top shutter. Even Jesus had to. Rhythm kidnapper, known as the X Factor. But you don't hear me through like lyrics by Waka Flocka. Liberty on lockup, shackles, crippling dreams. Rather speak truth and let the rhyme scheme. These crabs in the barrel more concerned about the power. Argumentative and talk like a silence with a gavel. Tribalist, extortionist, greed is where corruption is. Karma is a mother, she gon' make you. Kayo, they suffer. Taxi driver, they suffer. Musician, they suffer. Opposition, they suffer. Politician, they suffer. Justice itself, they suffer. You've never known joy if you've never had to. Sangui, they suffer. Charlotte, they suffer. Patrick, they suffer. You all, they suffer. Jesus Christ, I'm so nice and never suffer. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. I want you guys to sing that for me. You say what? I only hear 3 people. Louder, you say what? I hear 10. I need to hear an auditorium. Even louder. You say what? All together, louder. You say, you've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. You've never known joy if you've never had to. Give me my free speech already so I don't have to suffer. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Manifest. A round of applause to him.
Ladies and gentlemen, wait, Manifest. Round of applause for Manifest. He actually had to change his schedule. I gave him 24 hours notice and I said, Manifest, you are literally probably the most intellectual rapper we have on the continent and we cannot have this discourse without you. Thank you, Manifest. Thank you for all you do. Appreciate you.
And Manifest, coming from Sangu, for me, I believe Sangu is one of the smartest people I know, and he says you are the smartest person he knows as a rapper. So thank you for coming. We are grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, as you stand, we'll take the closing remarks from Dr. Dennis Ado. We'll take the closing remarks from him. Please, you can take your seat, and we'll be right out of here.
So, just before we have the closing remarks and we'll move on to cocktails, we have another surprise. And that surprise is we're given, and I would ask all the Harvard Club executives who are here to please come up on stage to help me give this award. This is the John Harvard Award. It is the highest honor given by the Harvard Club of Ghana. And it is given to outstanding men and women who represent the highest levels of excellence and who represent the highest levels of ethics and integrity. It is intended that the recipients of this award are people who will inspire all of us to aspire to their level of excellence and service. Our recipient today is one of the greatest proponents and fighters of free speech in this country. He is an icon who for several decades has championed human rights, freedom of speech, and press freedom in this country. They say a lot of times a prophet is not honored at home. But we need to change that. We need to celebrate those who have laid the foundation for what we enjoy today. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to call to the stage, and he is unaware of this, so he's going to be a bit embarrassed. But I would like us to give a standing ovation to the inaugural winner of the John Harvard Award, a Ghanaian who for decades has been a staunch protector of freedom of the press. And that is none other than our very own Professor Kwame Kakare.
I can only say thank you to, I want to say a very heartfelt thank you to the Harvard Club, and of course specifically to my son here, Sangu. He's my son because my brother is Denandom now, Professor Dr. Dele. This is extremely overwhelming. The man asked me for my CV yesterday. I didn't even send it to him because I didn't know what he was going to use it for. I'm a retired teacher. Nobody employs me anymore, so what do you want my CV for? So thank you very much. I am extremely honored. I feel very, very honored, especially as you said, when that honor is coming from home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we will have closing remarks from our Vice President, Dr. Ado.
Thank you so much, Sangu. Shall we give a big hand to ourselves? I know we've all done well. The room is a bit hot, but all of us have managed to stay through. So we've all done very well. Free speech and academic freedom, where do we draw the lines? I don't think we can draw the lines this evening. Can we? I think there's been varied opinions and fantastic discussions this evening. So I'm sure the debate and the conversation will continue. So on behalf of the Harvard Club of Ghana, We want to say thank you to everybody for being here this evening, for spending your evening. I know it's Friday evening. There are so many things you could be doing this evening, but taking time out, coming here, and then joining us for this wonderful program. We say Ayuko, and thank you so much. And we appreciate you all for coming. We want to thank government officials who are here, members of parliament, ministers who came to join us. We say Ayuko and thank you. Members of the diplomatic corps who were here, I know some of them have left already. We say thank you so much. And to the University of Ghana Law School, we appreciate you so much. Without you, we could not have done this program, for coming to partner with us, for giving us this auditorium, this wonderful auditorium, and then, of course, availing yourself and all your faculty to help us plan this program. We say thank you very much. And also to our panelists, we say thank you so much. Mr. Patrick Iwa, thank you so much. Honorable Dr. Dixon Adumako, I think he's left. He's here. Oh, thank you. You see, very dynamic MP. We appreciate you so much. Your Lordship, Sir William Atuga, we say thank you so much for the wisdom you shared with us. We appreciate you so much. And of course, Madame Charlotte Osei, our former EC chair, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Also to Professor Kojo Apieje Etia, our keynote speaker, we say thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and also enlightening us on some of these topics. Of course, the media, without you, we can't do it all, and we appreciate you for coming to grace the occasion as well. The Harvard Club of Ghana also have some patrons. We call him the godfather, Mr. Kali Gajepo. I don't know whether he's around. He is one of the pioneers of the Harvard Club of Ghana, and he generously donated to make sure this program comes. So even though he's not here, I'm sure we can give him a round of applause for that. We also have another patron, Lawyer Kimathi. He's also not here today, but he's one of the staunch pillars of the club, and he always also donated to make sure this program came on. Of course, to our executives, to our dynamic president, Sangu. Shall we give him a big hand? He's the only man in Ghana currently with 3 different degrees from Harvard. So I'm sure he has a Harvard blood through and through him. So thank you so much, Sangu. When he initially came out with this brilliant idea to hold this series, we were wondering how we were going to pull it off. But through his leadership of the Harvard Club Ghana, it's been a successful program. And thank you so much. He also sits on the Harvard University Board of Overseers as well. So he's doing a fantastic job and making Mother Ghana proud. Thank you so much, Sangu, for your leadership. We appreciate you as well. And of course, we have Christian as well, who's also our vice president. And also Miche. Miche is not here. Miche is our vice president for programs. It was through her instrumentality that we got this program planned, and she did fantastic. So thank you, Miche, for putting it together as well. And of course, Albert, who is our director of finance, is also not here today, but I'm sure he made sure that all of you can have your enjoyable cocktail at the end when we are done. And to all members of the Harvard Club Ghana, whether online or here, we appreciate you and all your efforts. Thank you so much. And finally, to our dynamic MC, Priscilla, please come forward. We have a little present for you. You know, I know you've been announcing all the awardees, but I think we also have to appreciate you for such a wonderful evening. So if you can come for a little prize for you. Thank you so much, Priscilla. All right, thank you so much. So I think it's time for cocktail, and we'll end it here, and then closing prayer will come before all of us go and enjoy cocktail. The whole idea is to mingle, network, ask questions, anything bothering your mind. We have a lot of programs planned by the Harvard Club of Ghana for the rest of the year, and I'm sure anything bothering your mind you can ask, and then we'll be there to answer for you. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate you, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for coming once again. Right in front here, I've seen the father of the president of Harvard Club of Ghana. He is a wonderful man. He's an octogenarian, actually. He's lived a long time. And God has blessed him immensely. He has wonderful boys. I see some of his sons here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, a man with profound wisdom. When you hear him speak for 5 minutes, I think your life will be sorted out, and I'm not even kidding you. With a thunderous round of applause, please help me welcome Nandom, now Professor Dilly. I think he deserves a bigger one. That is the Nandom, now Professor Dilly. I think Prof has something to say. Yes. Please, Prof wants to give us some words of wisdom. I think we should give it. Please, can you be on your feet and honor Prof as he comes?
What can I say? I have Sangu, who is Dr. Sangu, my son. And I have 5 children, and he was the last. And right from the age of 6, he knows I read a lot, so he was reading my books. And I don't know how he got to know about Harvard University. And he told me that the only university he will go to is Harvard. And then we told him that Harvard, how do we get the money? Money, he said, look, where you go and get is not my business. So he has made me proud. He was able to go there, and he's a shining example of determination. That is one of the things I tell people. If you determine to do something, you do it. Strangely enough, from there, I sent the other siblings to this school in first stream. I sent some of them. He said, no, me, I'm going only to the international school. That's what he wanted. So all the brothers will say, why are you giving special attention to Sangu? I said, well, he's the youngest. But I have a lot of hope that one day he will make me proud. And of course, he has made the whole family proud. Yes, so I thank you very much. And I'm praying that he will do greater things than I have done. Thank you very much.
That's so sweet, isn't it? Please, the Nandom, now Professor Dilly. Once again, a round of applause for him. We'll take the closing prayer from our Imam in the person of Mukhtar. Please, if our Imam is here, kindly welcome him as he gives us the closing prayer.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Oh Allah, Lord of might and power, Lord of knowledge, of wisdom and wisdom, we thank you, we glorify your name. We thank you for making this program a success. We thank you for guiding and directing all stakeholders to bring this particular occasion to this end. And we pray to you to bless us with the wisdom and understanding that we need to absorb and digest the wealth of information that is delivered here, so that in your will, in your power, we can make Ghana a best place to live. If we depart here, we ask for your protective and guardian mercies to ride with each and every one of us back to our various destinations. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
I leave you with this. Freedom of speech is freedom above all for the people whose opinions you dislike most. Remember, they also have freedom of speech. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Priscilla Depa Adekwating. It's been my utmost honor to be your MC for today. It's been cocktails and conversations. Now we are done with the conversations. Please, the cocktails will be had outside. So kindly go outside. We have some music, some food, some drink. Relax, enjoy yourself. Make sure you network. Your network, they say, is your network. Have a good evening.